What's up, everyone? Yellow here, and today I'm going to be breaking down the patch notes that just dropped for Godfall's first major update. Now, I'm going to be just covering all the major gameplay changes, some bugs. This patch is almost all bugs, so I will leave a link to the patch notes in the description below if you'd like to go ahead and check those out, but I will be covering all the major points. Now, this did ruin my stream for tonight, which is going to be streaming floors 50 to 100 to show you guys what everything looks like past 100. So that will unfortunately not be happening. But without any further ado, let's get into it. As always, if you enjoyed the video, toss it a like. And if you'd like to see more Godfall content, consider subscribing. Let's get into it. So the first major bug change I see is they solved an issue with Surety that caused its damage to stack indefinitely with multiple Northern techniques. For those of you that don't know, whenever you use your Northern technique, this exposes the weak point, and I believe adds 93% weak point damage to it. This is probably how people were getting 1 million damage crits, like in my last video, 3 million damage. So it's still going to be the best augment in the game. Bosses probably just aren't going to melt as fast. Then a little bit further down, we see that they've solved an issue where some higher tier mid bosses were not dropping the correct amount of loot. This could go either way. They may have been dropping too much loot or too little. My guess is this applies to the Earthen Realm bosses or the Air Realm bosses, basically the Gauntlet bosses. So we'll see how this affects farming for loot. Next, they solved an issue where Foreboding Reach displayed a plus 0% bonus damage to Rampage. There's a ton of augments in this game that are bugged. Hopefully they've fixed multiple augments and not just this one. For you Hinterclaw players out there, it looks like they did solve a missing augment constellation connection on the Hinterclaw Valor play. I don't play him, so I'm not sure which one that was. Now, one of the biggest gameplay ones is actually pretty huge for the Tower of Trials. Players can no longer be interrupted by enemy AoEs when performing takedowns. It's a really good change, and I'm glad to see it. Hopefully they make a few other combat changes, but that's a really good one. Now, the next one is actually a major change. They solved an issue where Nyack Wingcarver's electric orb was dealing more damage than intended. For those of you who don't know, Nyack Wingcarver is a mob that can appear in the Tower of Trials, and they have these huge blue electric orbs that pretty much one-shot people. It's the whole reason that I built my Aegis Horn build, which ended up being great. But it looks like that was dealing more damage than intended, so I may not need to be as tanky now. I'll have to mess with the build and see what we can do to make it better. So they solved an issue where post-mission free roam would incorrectly scale to the highest player level. So now free roam after completed mission will now retain the mission's original level scaling. I believe this is going to fix the XP exploit where you could just level up to 50 super quick, but I'm not 100% sure. This also might ruin free roam if they're saying that these missions should not be scaling to level 50 when you're level 50 for farming. That's just going to make farming the gauntlets even more important. Now, the next one is the Darkstar Crusher. This is the legendary hammer that has the time bubble that a ton of people use. I haven't used it, so this isn't going to affect me. I never was lucky enough to have it drop. But basically, it no longer affects bosses or mid-bosses. So I can't imagine this hammer is going to be super useful. You might have one person run it if you're running a group in the Tower of Trials. Now the duration is set to 15 seconds instead of the 20 that it was before. And now it slows enemies by 50% instead of 70%. Next, they finally solved the light attack issue. So for people that don't know, sometimes you could just not attack at all with your light attack, and sometimes even your heavy attack, and it would just be locked. You couldn't do anything. You had to parry, throw your shield, do anything you could to try and unlock it. So it's good to see they did fix that. Next is they solved an issue in the Tower of Trial where the number of respawns could reset after completing a trial. So basically this is just saying that if you died earlier and then you got to a higher floor and you died again, your respawn may have reset and you could have got an extra attempt. That's no longer going to be happening. Next, they solved an issue with Warhammers receiving less bonus damage from various sources. That's basically your skills, Rampage, Polarity, Timing, and Consuming Rampage. And on top of that, the boons in the tower that give Warhammer extra damage gave less than originally shown. So this is a pretty decent buff to Warhammers. I still don't think it's a weapon I'd use, as longswords are just completely broken. Looks like they also made a lot of fixes to the gamepad controller. Looks like people before weren't able to navigate their friends list or navigate into the cosmetics menu. On top of this, I saw earlier that they did fix the issue where if your controller disconnected, which I brought this up in one of my previous videos, if your controller disconnected and you're playing on PC before, you couldn't reconnect it. It just read it as code. So it seems they've fixed that now, and you will be able to reconnect with your controller and continue playing. One of the biggest changes that I saw in these patch notes was they added 7 items missing from the loot pool. These should now drop appropriately. Keep an eye out. So I guess there were 7 items that none of us had ever seen before, so I'm interested to see if those are any good, especially since they do specify to keep an eye out, but that could just be them letting us know. Next, we have solved an issue where players needed to wait for the parry animation to finish before taking another action. So my question regarding this skill is that currently parrying doesn't do a lot, right? You get knocked back, they get knocked back. So my question is, with this change, once we parry, can we start attacking right away? If so, this is a great change. Looks like another gameplay change is they solved an issue where the player could not start sprinting until they caught their shield from a throw. And then this is for PC only. It says solved an issue where upgrading an item without highlighting a trait when using a mouse would cause the upgrade to fail and other issues. So my question is, does this fix the 0% upgrades that we're getting when we upgrade our items the 3rd time? And then here's what you heard me talk about before. It says solved an issue where alternating between controller and mouse and keyboard would cause joystick prompts to appear as debug text. So hopefully now I can actually take a dinner break and come back and continue to play on controller. Like I said, I think those are probably the biggest changes. There's a ton of bug fixes in here. Feel free to check out the link below in the description. Other than that, I'm going to have to test some of these changes out and see what it actually affects. And if there's anything major that I missed or wasn't in the patch notes, I'm sure it'll be discovered in the next few days. So other than that, I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.